Allodoxaphobia. Let's say you are at a lively party, enjoying yourself and engaging in a lot of fun conversations, diverse opinions, and viewpoints. For most people, this scene is highly enjoyable and, quite frankly, very stimulating. But for someone who has allodoxaphobia, as the conversation grows, you'd begin to become shaky and scared, as each differing opinion sounds more like a bullet being shot at you. You hate the fact that other people are openly sharing their opinions and they don't sound like you want to hear. Suddenly, you'd find yourself wishing you'd just stayed at home to binge watch your favorite sitcom. After all, the television doesn't talk back or offer opinions. While this sounds like what most Twitter users suffer from, this phobia is so intense that people who have it are not even willing or ready to listen to anything that goes against them. They are so scared of criticism and words of caution that it eventually grows into total hate for others' views or ideas. The roots of this phobia are actually tragic, as it mostly manifests among children who have been verbally abused or criticized by their teachers or parents. Because of the constant criticism and abuse, they would grow up to become very defensive when other people share their own opinions. Arithmophobia. One day in school, you're sitting in your algebra class, pencil in hand, as the teacher writes a new problem on the board. It's a mix of numbers, symbols, fractions, and the works. As the teacher calls you to solve it in front of everyone, you immediately break out in a cold sweat, and the room starts to spin. For most people, it's just a tough math question, but for someone with arithmophobia, it's like being asked to defuse a bomb without a manual. Suffering from this phobia can make simple things like paying bills, holding down jobs that involve numbers, or even managing a budget feel very scary. They would avoid anything that has numbers involved. If your teacher or parent harshly punished you for getting a math question wrong as a child, there's a high chance that you would begin to dislike numbers intensely, and seeing them alone would lead to panic attacks and extreme stress. Suddenly, 2 plus 2 feels more like 2 plus 2 equals run away! Nomophobia. According to scientific research, the average American man spends at least 4.5 hours on their phones every day for all sorts of activities. But for nomophobes, that's like telling them to eat just one apple as opposed to having a full meal. You see, that's because they have nomophobia, an intense fear or anxiety of being detached from mobile device connectivity. In simple terms, you can call it phone addiction. A person who's addicted to their mobile device would want to be with it 24/7, never letting it out of their sight even for 1 second. They would prefer to remain in the virtual world rather than exist in the real world, and the moment their devices are taken away or switched off, an insane panic that's accompanied by trembling, agitation, and profuse sweating starts. They believe that the minute they get disconnected from their phone, it automatically means that they've become disconnected from the world, and anything could go wrong, including, heavens forbid, missing a meme that could be life-changing. Somniphobia. So, you're having a really terrible day at work and you can feel a headache coming on soon. The first advice anyone would offer would be to go home and rest. They're basically implying that you need to go home, shower, and sleep for a couple of hours. This is because sleep is a very great relaxant for people going through stress. Well, for someone who has somniphobia, you might as well tell them just to chew and swallow 20 bowls of hot chili and get it over with. This is because they are so terrified of sleeping that chewing hot chili without milk sounds more welcoming. Somniphobia is the literal fear of sleep, and people who have this phobia could go as far as not sleeping for 4 days so that they don't have to close their eyes. This crippling fear of sleep normally stems from fear of what might happen when they sleep. They are so scared of having nightmares or experiencing sleep paralysis that they would rather stay awake than go to sleep. However, this phobia could lead to more dangerous situations because chronic lack of sleep can increase the risk of high blood pressure and diabetes. Chorophobia. Your wedding day will go down in history as one of the best days of your life, and a lot is expected from the married couple, from exchanging their wedding vows to the very first couple dance. But what happens if you have an intense fear of dancing? Yes, there is a phobia called chorophobia, and it is characterized by a person being absolutely terrified of dancing, or even being in a situation where people are dancing. This phobia stops the person from participating in any form of activity or occasion in which dancing is involved, like prom, clubs, or parties. Basically, anywhere that people would shake their bodies to rhythms. The minute they see people dancing, it would break out in a cold sweat that would lead to bouts of panic attacks. While many people might joke about having 2 left feet, those with chorophobia feel such extreme self-consciousness that a casual invitation to dance can make them dash to the nearest exit. So if you notice someone avoiding the dance floor at any cost, they might not be shy but actively dodging the disco. Ablutophobia. You've often heard that cleanliness is next to godliness, but for people who have ablutophobia, you're just chatting shit. You probably disliked taking baths when you were little, but there are the rare few that never outgrew this fear. They have an irrational fear of bathing or washing and would rather stink than that water come anywhere near them. The fear of bathing is so crippling that just thinking about it would make someone with this phobia experience a racing pulse, difficulty breathing, shortness of breath, and even nausea. Some may even pass out and faint. This phobia often starts at a very young age but grows into a more chronic fear as the individual gets older and is always associated with the person experiencing a traumatic event that involves water. Because bathing and cleaning yourself is an essential part of hygiene, people who have ablutophobia have body odor, skin irritations, and fungal growth that can turn into infections. Catastrophophia. The end and destruction of the entire world can sound really scary. You know, the sky falling on the earth and the sun and moon all crashing into each other. If you're a big fan of sci-fi movies, then you'd understand why this can be a very daunting thought. However, some people actually live every day with the intense fear that the sky would actually fall and crush the earth, and gravity would basically invert and swallow them up. People who have this specific phobia would avoid anywhere there's an open sky, like a football field or garden. They feel safer on cloudy days or when they're surrounded by trees or tall buildings that block the direct sky. The irrational fear of being swallowed up by the sky can become so crippling that they would never attempt to step out of their house again. Ironically, the perfectly safe space would likely be a room without any windows, like a basement. Arithmophobia. It's hard to spell, hard to pronounce, and even harder to understand. For millions of people worldwide suffering from peanut allergies, it is totally rational to be frightened of peanut butter, as even a little intake can cause extreme shock and even death. But this weird phobia has no business with a peanut butter allergy because a person suffering from it actually has an irrational fear of getting peanut butter stuck to the roof of their mouth. Like, seriously. So you're simply trying to savor a snack and out of nowhere it becomes a literal sticky situation. This strange phobia often comes as a packaged deal with pseudodysphagia, which is the fear of swallowing or choking while swallowing. Well, the upside of this strange and extremely specific phobia is that it can simply be avoided by staying away from peanut butter and turning down PB&J sandwiches. Plutophobia. There's a popular saying that money is the root of all evil. Well, the people who have this phobia took this saying very personally because they hate and avoid money at all costs. They hate and avoid money at all costs. Imagine being allergic to your bank account. What this means is that people with plutophobia fear money. They are so scared of wealthy people and would start to panic at the thought of even becoming wealthy themselves, literally. They generally dread money and having anything to deal with it. Sometimes, they would even go as far as sabotaging their careers just to avoid making more money and becoming wealthy. This phobia mostly stems from the fear of responsibility associated with being a rich person, or they fear they might become victims of robbery the minute they start having money. So while most people dream of hitting the jackpot, plutophobes are out there doing everything they can to miss it. Optophobia. It's another morning and your alarm clock is the villain of your dreams. You're supposed to wake up, but part of you really wants to keep your eyes closed and sleep for just a little bit longer. Or maybe you're at the movie theater watching what the critics have called the scariest movie of the decade. And at the first big scare, you clamp your eyes shut, hoping that nothing can get through. This is an extremely mild version of everyday life for a person who has optophobia, which is the intense, debilitating fear of opening their eyes. They honestly believe that opening their eyes would cause them harm, so they keep it closed always and function without ever opening their eyes. A person with optophobia would remain in dimly lit rooms and tie a cloth around their eyes so that they can't see anything that could potentially cause them harm. Globophobia. Balloons are always used in ceremonies and birthday parties to decorate the place and make everywhere a lot more memorable. However, for a person with Globophobia, which is an intense fear of balloons, seeing a room full of balloons would probably feel like hell to them. This is because they are so scared of balloons that even seeing one on TV would trigger intense anxiety and panic attacks. This rare fear can especially be hard on young children, as they are often more likely to see balloons than adults. It usually starts when you experience a traumatic event that a balloon was involved in, such as popping the balloon and being scared of the noise. Sometimes people with this phobia also have a great fear of clowns, as the two, balloons and clowns, are often found together. Pogonophobia. The people who have this phobia have an extreme fear of facial hair. They would go to any extent to avoid people who have facial hair because they associate it with poverty or homelessness. People with pogonophobia would avoid barbershops and hair salons like it's the plague. They would even avoid certain Christmas holiday shopping, like going to the mall in case someone there is wearing a Santa costume. If a person saw someone with a goatee or mustache, they would immediately break out in a cold sweat, feel dizzy and lightheaded, and would even start to tremble and shake. Phobophobia. In all the phobias we just mentioned, people have a reason for why they developed their fears, but this particular phobia is by far the weirdest. Phobophobia is the intense fear of being afraid. Like you are so afraid of having a phobia that you actually develop a phobia. The fear of phobias is commonly co-diagnosed with another phobia, which means that in your quest to not have a phobia, you pretty much develop a fear of it. If you had this phobia, you would always avoid any social situation that can lead to anxiety or panic. Heliophobia. Vampires. They're exciting, mysterious creatures of myth that feed on blood and live forever. But imagine if you had one of the biggest drawbacks of being a vampire without any of the cool powers to show for it. If that's the case for you, then you may be experiencing heliophobia, a pathological fear of the sun. This fear often comes from concerns about developing skin cancer, but the even more extreme cases can stem from the fear of aging or wrinkling. If you ever experienced a severe case of sunburn, then that would be a trigger that sets the condition off. The people who suffer from this literally live like mythical vampires and would only step outside at night to attend to any business. The dangers of this phobia can cause serious health issues because abstaining from natural light can cause vitamin D deficiencies, which would lead to a weakened immune system, fatigue, and bone pain.